Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 10 Dimensions of Wellness. I'm Mika Newton, and today's episode is really close to my heart because I'm sitting down with the two most important women in my life, my mother and my daughter. So today's conversation is about healing, not just the pretty parts, but the real parts. We're talking about what it was like growing up in our family, what we carried, what we learned, and how we're learning to forgive ourselves and each other. We're not claiming to have it all figured out, but we're here together doing the work. Remember, healing is an inside job. My mom can't heal me, I can't heal my daughter, and vice versa. We all have the responsibility to do the individual work to get there. Our hope is that maybe this conversation can open up something in your family too. So let's get started. Hi, Mom.
Hi, baby.
Hi, Ash. Hi, my baby.
Hi, mommy.
So I'm good. Are you guys feeling okay? You feeling good? Are you a little
Yes,
nervous?
I'm feeling good.
Yep.
I'm not nervous.
Okay. How you feeling, Mama?
Mhm.
I still have some anxiety, but I'm okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna start. We're gonna start gentle. Okay. So my first question is, what's one thing you remember about how your mother showed you love growing up? And it can be something small, something big, something quiet. And I can start, so I can, get the tone going. So for me,
Mhm.
my mom, Robyn, showed love because she really cared about the environment that me and my brother grew up in. She worked really hard, mommy. You worked really hard to move us out of South
Thank
Park,
you.
Hollywood,
Thank you.
and to make sure that we were in an environment that was safe for us to be kids. And even when we moved on to, what was that 12th Street for a little while in middle school, you knew we weren't happy there. And you were like, okay,
Yeah.
we got to go somewhere that, my kids can go outside and
Hmm.
play and be happy. So that was
Right.
one way that I remember. Mom, how did your mom show
Well,
you love?
um, I can't remember. Um, to tell you the truth, I can't even remember a hug from my mother growing up. I'm sure I got it when I was little, but I can't remember.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when the children start coming, I just remember having responsibility.
yeah,
So, but I think the first inkling that I think she was showing appreciation and love is when she gave me my own bedroom amongst all the other seven siblings. Because
yeah.
my two sisters had to share a room, and the brothers shared one big room in the basement. But I got my own bedroom, so I think that was her way of showing her love and appreciation of being uh, mother's helper.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about it that way
Yeah.
before tonight?
Yes, I have. I felt
Yeah.
like that's her only thing she could really give me was my own space,
Yeah.
from all the work that I had to help her with
Yeah.
raising, my siblings.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Mama? What is a way that your mommy showed you love growing up?
Yeah, so something that I always held on to was that you always made sure that I was never without. So even though I didn't have any siblings, and I know that you worked very hard, mostly by yourself also, to raise me, you always made sure that I was never without and always made sure that I could try and do different things. I know I always had very loving and great Christmases, and you always make sure I got everything I wanted, and always allowed me to try different sports, even if it's something that I've never done before. So yeah, you always made me feel safe, and I was never without, even if it was just the two of us.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, when you were little, and I'll start with you, Mommy, what did
Hmm.
being a girl, what did being a girl in your family feel like? What were you taught directly or indirectly about how to act, feel, how to be a girl, being a girl?
I wasn't taught how to be a girl. I was tomboyish because I had brothers and I was around boys all the time. And I wasn't really taught how to be, gentle, being a lady, being a girl until I got a little older. And then my friends, watching
Mm-hmm.
my friends and getting cues from them, because, my mother comes from a different generation as I have a
Mm-hmm.
different generation. And she wasn't explained things,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. That's my
but
first
no,
time hearing that. Yeah.
yeah, nah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned from watching my peers.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
peers. Hmm.
What about you,
Nana,
Mama?
I'm actually surprised to hear you say that because for me, I got it from both of you. Mommy, you've always been into fashion and clothes and all of those things, and that's something that I picked up on. And then Nana, I do remember when I was smaller, and I'd always remember going to your vanity and looking at all your makeup and your perfume and playing in it. And I also remember you telling me, a lady always has her toes and her nails painted. That's something that stuck with me
Yeah.
when I was little. So I'm actually surprised to hear you say that. That's something that
Yeah.
you didn't pick up until later, because that's something
Yes.
that I remember most about you when I was little.
Yeah. I had to learn that on my own because my mother, she didn't have the chance, I think, to experience that. Because she got married a few weeks before she graduated from high school. She went right into wife and then motherhood.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For me, growing up, being a girl with you, Mom, I learned, and I don't know if it was mostly directly to be strong. Like I
hmm,
remember growing up, it was like, make sure you get your education. Make sure you don't have to rely on anybody. If people can leave, so make sure you can be able to pay your rent, have a car, be able to take care of
yeah,
yourself. Protecting myself.
yep,
Growing up in school, it was like, don't get pregnant. It was about I think self-preservation and strength is what I learned. That's what being a girl in our
hmm,
household was like for me.
yeah.
So yeah. Um
Well, I'm
and
glad you picked that up and it stuck
it did
because
it did it
because you
probably
did
stuck a
it
little
because
too
you
well.
too hard, yeah, a little too well. Because sometimes I scratch my head. Maybe I taught her too hard because my daughter
Yeah.
be,
Yeah. Yeah. It can be, yeah, sometimes it can be a little too, I can do it all, on my own,
yeah,
superwoman mentality. But I'm learning to soften and to ask for help more and things like that. So,
yeah.
what was the emotional vibe like in your house, Mommy, growing up? Like, did you guys talk things out, or was it more hold it in and keep it moving? Were you able to have a voice?
I didn't have a voice. I was told what to do, and mostly it was work around the house and taking care of siblings. Uh, I wasn't able to express what I was feeling. It was almost like uh, I was being ignored. I mean, it was on my face, and I read body languages a lot, but back then they didn't. But you could tell I was a depressed child growing up because I did have my room. That was my only solace that I had when all my chores was done and the kids was bathed or diapered and the bottles feedings or whatever. I retreat to my room, and that was my only solace with music. Play it
Hmm.
all the time, and that was just me. And to this day, I still do that. I have this house with 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and I'm always in that room. And you know that,
Yes, you are.
Tamika.
Your woman cave, as you call it.
Yeah, exactly. I've been like that since I got my own room when we moved to Walnut Street, and that was in 1965.
Yeah.
So it's been
How do you think,
16, what, six,
yeah. I'm gonna ask Ashley the same question. You know what? Let me ask Ashley the question first, and I'll come back. Mama, how do you think? What was the vibe as far as growing up with me? Did we talk things out? Do you feel like you're allowed to have a voice, or did we like hold things in and just kind of like keep it moving?
For me, I feel like I expressed as much as I was able to, depending on what it was about. I didn't feel that I was unable to come to you for anything. Um, you did provide an environment where I felt like I could come to you with anything. I think I still struggle with this. I think I sometimes feel like I can get through it on my own. So there were times where I probably didn't, and maybe I should have. And I just learned to kind of, well, maybe if I think it out and think it through, I won't have to pull anyone else into, what I'm feeling, and maybe not have to put that burden on someone else. But even though I didn't necessarily have that environment, it's something that I just naturally would do because I didn't want to burden anyone else with what.
Yeah, you've always been quiet with your feelings.
Yeah.
Ever since you were a little girl, and trying to provide the space for you to be vocal, because so going back to me, because I felt the same way you did, Mom. I felt like I wasn't allowed to like say if I was upset or angry or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because that wasn't something that was tolerated in your house. So you weren't taught how to allow
Mm-hmm.
your children to have a voice. So for
Right.
me, when I was raising Ashley, it was really important for me to make sure that she could be heard and understood and be able to say, she was upset. I remember a couple times she was she got mad at me, and I was like, "You allowed to be mad. You can go to your room and be mad, but you're allowed to be mad." You're allowed to have your feelings. I can't stop you from your feelings, but you're about to go in your room with it. So it's I know it's really hard to, I think, when you're raised under different generations, because there is either a safety or a fear, I think. And Mom, you didn't know how to allow, and I think too, with that generation, with grandma's and with yours, for a child to express how they felt was almost like talking back. And it was like looked at as like
Exactly.
disrespectful. It was looked at as
It was.
disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for me, I just did like, is it a 180 or 360 or 180? And I was like, well, I know what I needed. I had so much that I wanted to say and felt like I didn't have a voice. And honestly, I don't think I found my voice until I was in like my 30s and 40s. I was always really
Mm-hmm.
quiet, really shy. I never really told people how I really felt about things. I'm about to get emotional already. We're just into the first couple questions.
That's okay.
But I know, and I'm talking about y'all. But so yeah, so for me, because I was so quiet and mousy and shy, and I struggled like in middle school and high school, I didn't want Ashley to deal with that. I wanted her to be able to like, stand up for herself and be confident in who she was. So yeah, so I'm glad that
Yeah, that's
you were able to get that.
generational pass on, and you broke the generation because I was bullied in school, in
Yeah.
elementary and stuff, and I couldn't, I didn't tell anybody about it, and I just suffered through it and went through it, and I was quiet, and I didn't find my voice until I was in my 30s, and I
Hmm.
got very vocal, about things. Even when I started my first job when I was 24, when I got that job, and even the co-workers, because I was hired under a quota, felt like they could talk to me any kind of way. And I knew they didn't want me there, but they had to
Yeah.
have me there.
Yeah.
But after a few years being there, I got vocal,
Yeah.
and
Mom,
I
but I want
started
to, I want
standing.
to go back, explain to our listeners what being hired under a quota means for some people that may not understand what that means.
It means it was 1978, and what today they call DEI. It was called Equal Opportunity. They had to hire people of color. They had to have one Black female, one Black male, one Hispanic female, one Hispanic male. And I was the one Black female that they hired. And they told me that. They didn't have to tell me that, but they was letting me know, yeah, we have to hire somebody of the quality. I guess you'll do. And I was 24 years old when I got that job, and I came out 54 and a half. So I spent over half of my life in that place.
Yeah.
But
so I just wanted people to understand. So
yeah, that's what that was.
Okay. So did you finish your thought? I want to make sure you finish your thought.
I finished my thought. I like I said, I was mistreated. I didn't have a voice because of my color. Didn't want to upset anybody, because I had children to take care of and I needed that job. But after a few years, after I got my 30s, I started vocalizing and saying things. And I remember the first thing I stood 10 toes down on that I wanted, and I got it. And from that point on, I was like, I'm not shutting up anymore. What was it?
Do you remember what it was that you
Yes,
wanted?
I do. I remember exactly what it was. It was, we didn't get weekends off all the time. You Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Anyway, I worked there for 6 years on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And finally, the schedule for that year, that 6th or 7th year that I worked there, I had Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off, and I was on the same schedule as this white lady, okay? Well, she got the Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off, and they changed my schedule that month on December, and I had to work Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And I wrote a letter to my boss and told him that I have never said anything, and I got small children because y'all was still young. I have small children. I have yet to spend Christmas with them, and this is my 7th year, and I had it off, and you changed my schedule and left carols up there. He didn't say anything to me, but guess what? When I came back the next day, that schedule was changed back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember those were tough, not having mom for Christmas.
Yeah, I missed all those Christmas Eves and Christmas Days with my kids, and then the one time I was scheduled off, and they changed it in December, and I wrote him a letter, and he didn't say anything to me, like no apologies or anything, but I didn't have to have the apology. Yeah, as long as I got those days off.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, me and Neiman, we were somewhere I was either Grandma Rose, we had Grandma Sadie on Christmas Eve. We opened our gifts at midnight. Grandma Newton and Grandma Rose on Christmas Day.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
So
it made for good Christmases though. We would have trash bags full of toys, like the outdoor yard trash bags full of toys.
Full of stuff. Yeah.
And I think that was their way. I think that was their way of making up for that too. Now that I think about it, they just wanted to make sure we had really good Christmases because mom wasn't there. Yeah.
Right. Mom, not to hijack, but how did you feel when that Nana wasn't there?
Sad. Yeah, really sad. And that's why your Christmases were so extravagant. It was almost like I was giving Christmas to little me too. And seeing your face and being so and I know after a while you hate it because I used to wrap up every single little thing in your
stocking stuffers.
Yes, I wrapped the stocking stuffers because I wanted her to have all these things to unwrap. And as she got older, she'd be like, "Mom," but but I think that was my way of making the little girl in me happy and making sure that you never felt that way. Where's my mom? And Christmas and stuff like that.
And I was hard. Working. I wasn't. Yeah, she
wasn't partying or anything like that.
Yeah, I felt guilty about it, but still, I worked quietly and did what I was supposed to do to take care of my children because I wasn't getting any support or anything like that. Yeah. And I did feel guilty about it, But and then I had to talk myself out of that guilt and said, Robyn, you're not hanging in a crack house. You're not hanging around at a bar. You know,
Yeah.
you're working to make sure your children are safe and going to good schools. So that's how I would get through it.
And can I say that as a kid, you don't understand that. I remember as a little girl,
Right.
I thought you wanted to, I thought it was she's making the choice to work on Christmas.
Yeah.
As a little girl, because
And
you don't know. You don't know the ins and outs. You don't
yeah,
know that you're
you
not in
don't know,
charge of your own
you don't know.
schedule. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you came to, I think once you got in the workforce, you kind of you got it.
yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. I got
You
it.
know
I
where it's like,
understood.
well,
Yeah.
you don't understand when you're a kid. You don't,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
There's no way to process it.
I
Mm-mm.
Okay,
would
we're gonna
agree with.
shift. Go ahead, Mama.
I would agree with the working part, because I know you have a retail background, and it does have you had to travel a lot, and
Yeah.
you weren't there for a few days at a time. And at the time, I would probably agree. I thought it was something
Yeah.
that, oh, like
You
she wants
chose to
something that
do.
you want to
Yeah.
do, and all of that. Because I think I had
Mm-hmm.
some of those feelings when I had to first go live with dad, and
Yeah.
some of those things came up. So I understand what you mean.
Yeah. Because I remember
Mm-hmm.
when me and Kelvin got divorced, because you would stay with you would be with
Hmm.
him and that's when I was working for a maid company, and we were going to New York a lot. We would go for a week,
Mm-hmm.
come back, go for another week. So I was gone 2 weeks a pop sometimes. And when we got divorced, and initially it wasn't the greatest separation, so I didn't have anyone
Yeah.
to keep Ashley. So Ashley had to go and stay with Nate until I figured out what was gonna happen. And then eventually I left May Company. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough. So yeah, it's like as a kid you
You
don't
don't know.
know.
Now I completely understand.
Yeah,
You don't
right.
know.
Especially with you going
Mm-hmm.
into the same industry as your
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to transition and talk about becoming mothers. So I'll
Mm.
ask you first, Mom. When you first became a mom, what surprised you most about yourself? And I don't know if I still know the answer to this question yet, but that's why I'm gonna start with you. What surprised
You
you
mean
about yourself? About you. What surprised you about you when you became a mother?
I was excited.
Yeah.
To me, yeah, it's weird. It might sound weird, but I felt like I had my own child now to take care of. I was proud of that.
I'm surprised after taking care of all those siblings that you'd
Right.
even want to have
Yeah, but
kids.
I got my own baby. I have to take care. This is my baby now because in my head, quiet, quietly, I wouldn't dare say to my mother, "These are your kids. Why I gotta feed them? Why I gotta diaper them? Why I gotta wash the diapers? They didn't have Pampers. I had to
Yeah.
wash them. And why I gotta bathe them? Why every time I go somewhere they gotta go with me? But I wouldn't dare say it. you
Right.
know, the first
Right.
time I held a baby in my arms to feed him was my brother Bob. I was 7 years old. My mother would prop pillows under my arm and lay them in my arms, and I'm feeding them. So I guess that part, taking care of them, I had to learn the ability to take care of a baby. But when I was pregnant with my own baby, I was like, I got my own baby now. I ain't take care of siblings no more. And when I turned 18, me and you moved out.
Yeah.
And I've been gone ever since.
Yeah.
Been gone ever since.
What about you, Mama?
I think for me, it surprised me how natural it was for me. Um, I don't feel like I was around a lot of small children in my childhood. And I think being a millennial, it was always a thing to, like, don't get pregnant too soon, and, like, make sure you're in, the best state of your life to where you can get pregnant and all of that and become a mother and a parent. And I think I just wanted to make sure that I felt secure enough in my life to be able to be the best mom I can be. And, and obviously I don't have it all figured out by any means, but it did surprise me how easy it felt once that time in my life came.
Yeah. You're such a good mommy. I
Thank you.
love watching you
You
with the
are.
babies, and it is natural. It just came naturally, and you're so patient and
Really?
soft and
And
gentle. You are. You're
yes,
extremely patient. Extremely patient.
And that's
Yeah.
something that I
I
always
want to ask
struggle with anyway. So
Ashley.
I'm surprised.
Go ahead, Mama.
I want to ask you, Ashley, that something your mom and your nana hasn't experienced to raise two at a time
Mhm.
at the same age. How did you manage that? I mean,
I honestly don't know.
both of
Just
them
I
hungry at the
think,
same time, diapers at the same time.
and honestly,
I
like,
mean, it's one is hard.
Yeah.
and honestly, they as newborns, they never really needed something like that at the exact same time. I think from what I remember, I feel like one would always be asleep and then one
They were
would be up.
opposites.
They were
Yeah.
always
I was there
opposite
those
in
first few
everything.
months.
So
Okay.
it was never super difficult to tend to one and not tend to the other because the other one would be preoccupied or sleeping or I don't
Mm,
know. Like honestly, and obviously I don't know what it's like to just have one. So I have to figure it out.
right.
And
Yeah.
and obviously, Rashad's the best with them also. So that also helped. And then I think also when mom and his mom came to help us out in the beginning to kind of get us to ease into parenthood helped a lot. As I know a lot of people don't have that, especially for 2 months back to back. So I did have a lot of anxiety knowing that when mom was leaving and when his mom would leave, I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to do it and how we were going to be able to do it because there was always a third person in the home.
Someone.
There's always someone else to help us.
Mm.
But yeah, honestly, it's something that we had to do. So we figured it out.
Figured it out. Yeah.
Hey, you do it well.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You do it
Yeah.
well.
And for me, I know it was important to be there for that time, and thankfully, because now after I came back, they kind of changed the rules at Carter's. I think I took advantage of a loophole or something like that, because that's when we were like working from home, and then we had a couple days in office, but of the in-office days, like I would just be. So I took advantage of the fact that we weren't in the office 100%, and I was gone from November to the beginning of January. I think I left on New Year's Day or something like that, or the day after. But for me, I was going to make sure I was there because I had you all the way on the West Coast by myself,
Yeah.
and I literally delivered you by myself. I sent your dad off to get me some Burger King and he came back and you had popped out already. I went through the birth by myself. I went through, your dad would have to go overseas. He'd have duty, and it was just me in Washington State by myself. I didn't have a shower. I didn't have like a celebration. And I wanted to make sure that you were wrapped in as much help and support as I could possibly give you. So thank God that things happened the way that it did. I might have had to tell Carter, sorry, I'm out, but I was determined to be there to support you and Rashad for the baby's birth. But going back to the question, what surprised me most about myself was that I naturally knew how to be nurturing. And I wasn't sure that I would. And also, I don't think I ever told you, Ashley, I didn't think I could get pregnant.
Really?
I did not think I could get pregnant. You were a surprise. I think God just wanted me to wait until I was married because me and your dad were not careful in high school. And I just never, it just never happened. So we were just like bebopping around doing whatever, but that was God's protection because literally we got married in March. He came and got me in June and we drove to California and I got pregnant in June. So all that time we had been so careless and then boom, I get pregnant. So I was completely shocked.
Right.
It was time. It was time.
Mhm.
So I was surprised that I knew how to be nurturing and towards you. Yeah, because I didn't know. I didn't experience, all the lovey-dovey part.
And I would have never guessed you didn't think you would be, because you've always been nurturing. And it seemed like it came easy to you. So I'm surprised.
Yeah, and I guess because I wasn't a mother, I didn't know how I would be. And I think I was always like a sensitive child. And I think I always was a loving child, but maybe I didn't always feel free or safe to express it. I would in certain environments, like my grandma Rose, that's where I think I learned a lot about nurturing with Grandma Rose. She just, when you say mom,
Mhm.
she was just, she had the biggest heart and she was so loving and she just, yeah.
Yes, she was. Even though I'm sure she's been going through some things, I think she's one that hid hers too, but she hid it
Yeah,
well.
she hit it well.
But
Yeah,
she didn't let on to you. She made
yeah.
sure you were always loved, always wanted. You know,
She let me do
I mean,
whatever I
before you
want.
came out, yeah, before you even came out of the womb, you know, bassinets, clothes, everything.
Yeah. So, mom, what did you try to do differently from your mom?
I wanted my kids to be kids.
Mhm.
I didn't want y'all bogged down with, you know, adult responsibilities. I didn't
Mhm.
want y'all placed in that position where I don't know. I just was one of those moms, just felt like you, and I did. Y'all had freedom.
Mhm.
Y'all wanted to go to a party, you go to a party. You want to go ride with your friends? Yeah, you can go ride with your friends as long as I know who they are. And I would
Mhm.
ask questions because, Neiman had a lot of, them kind of
Mhm.
friends. And I want to make sure the house was, welcoming.
Yeah.
I didn't want him
Yeah.
to be out there and, something happened to him, because I was always keen on that,
Right.
because of the environment I grew up in,
Yeah.
because there's racism. Racism is real,
Yeah.
but I just wanted you guys to, my thing I would tell you guys, if you remember, I want y'all to be happy. And I used to tell y'all all the time, when you get a job, make sure you get a job you're going to be happy in, because it's really, really hard to go to a job you hate. Because I
Mhm.
did it, and I didn't want neither one of my children to do that, to go to a job that they just absolutely hate.
Yeah.
That's
What if
bad, to work somewhere for 30 years and you hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a
That's a
long
long
time.
time, Nana.
It is. So then conversely, mama, mommy, what was harder to change than you thought it would be? So I know you tried to do that different from your mom. What was harder to change and what do you think you did that kind of was passed down from her, like subconsciously, indirectly?
Uh, Not being open enough, I guess.
Hmm.
You know, uh, and allowing you guys to say, well, I used to tell Neiman a lot that it's okay to cry, because they used to tell boys they can't cry.
Hmm.
Girls, it's okay for girls to cry. But I used to tell my son all the time, you're allowed to cry. Because I used to hear my dad tell the boys, you don't cry, you don't supposed to cry. I didn't want my son to grow up like that.
Yeah.
Girls, we cry. But I wanted my boy to know it's okay to cry. It doesn't make you less than a man because you cry,
Yeah.
you know. But I didn't want feelings to be I didn't want his feelings to be suppressed.
Yeah. Ash, I know we still have toddlers, but can you think of anything that you're trying to do differently from me and then something that's harder to change than you thought it would be?
Um, I'll, I can feel myself about to cry. I think something that I do want to change, and this isn't a slight to you, mommy, because I know that
I know that, baby.
you did everything you could. I don't want them to know what it's like to not have me around.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, I know a lot of your, had to do with work, and that was the ultimate decision to why I ended up with dad for a few years. And I think I have a hard time like leaving for extended periods, and I don't want them to feel like they have to hurt because I'm not there, simply just because I'm not there.
Yeah.
So I want to create stability for them also.
Yeah.
And, I just want them to feel like they have stability with their mom and know that I'm there almost every time they turn around. And, I'm probably babying Trey a little bit too much because of having those feelings, and Zoe's a little bit more independent, but I'm like that with her too. I just want to pick them up every time they cry and all of those things. I just want to make sure they feel stable with their relationship with me.
Yeah. If there was one thing that I could change, it would have been to force you to come with me to Columbus. And for that, I struggle with, because I think in that regards that sometimes I might have been too loose as a mother, like with boundaries, because I allowed you to make a decision that you shouldn't have been able to make at 14. And the reason I did that was because I thought about the court system, and I thought about when kids are allowed to decide if they want to live with their mom or live with their dad without the court being involved, and they took the child into consideration. And that was 14 or 15. And when I had to leave Detroit, I knew I had moved you so much, and you wanted to graduate with your friends. And the thought of taking you from that hurt me. I wanted you to be happy, but I also wanted you with me. And that was a really hard decision for me to make. I remember when I would come and get you, and we would be in Columbus, and you would have something like, maybe dad made you mad or something, like, well, move home, come to Columbus. You were like, it almost felt like, it was almost like you wanted to like tough it out, you know? You
And
wanted to.
I think I did. I don't think I've ever admitted it to you, but I did have regrets at times just not coming with you. And there were.
Did you not want to admit it?
I don't think so, because there were things that during that time and experience that we don't have to get into detail now, and we can always talk later, but there were things that I experienced during that time where I thought maybe I was making it up, or maybe there were things that I couldn't substantiate and someone else would understand because it's only something that I can see.
Yeah, gaslighting. You were being gaslit.
I was probably gaslighting myself, thinking that that wasn't what the situation was. So I had times where I felt isolated or alone, and I didn't want to admit it because I wanted to experience, what it's like having siblings, because I was really excited about that. And but I think I felt like I needed to tough it out, and because I thought I was gaslighting myself about it.
I wish, we can't go back and change things, but I think about it a lot, even at your big age at 32. When I wrote down, I can't remember what year it was, but I did something for New Year's where I was writing down all the things that I was forgiving myself for. And that was one of the things that I wrote down, is like, I had to forgive myself for not making you come with me, especially with you being a girl, and during high school, those formative years, and it's like, your dad is a good dad, but you needed your mom. And
I did. And I don't blame you for any of it. I hope you don't have any of those type of feelings that where I'm
No,
blaming you for it.
no.
Because I also felt like it would ended up being a catalyst to where I am now. Because I probably wouldn't have went to Bowling Green. I wouldn't have met Rashad, and
Right,
Trey
right.
and Zoe wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So I felt like it's almost as if something came out of me suffering in those
It was
years,
a journey.
and my blessing came out of it, and having the beautiful family that I have. So I don't completely regret it just because of
That
that
part.
piece, but it's this has come up recently, honestly, that I've thought about, and it's something that I would like to talk with you more if we need to off of
Yeah.
here, but it's something that I think about too.
Okay. We'll talk after. Okay. So, oh,
Sorry.
okay. No, no, that's what this is for. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's something, I ask you this, Mom, what's something you wish your children knew about what you were going through while raising them, but you never said out loud?
That uh so many things. I'm tired, I'm depressed, I'm having thoughts, I don't want to work anymore. I'm not tired of being a mother or anything. I just wish I could just stay at home with my kids and just be there with my kids and do whatever I want with my kids. I mean, the job was a big part of my life, and and mentally it was affecting me really bad. And it took me to some dark places. But what kept me going was my kids.
Yeah.
That's what kept me going and kept me here.
Yeah.
So, but I seeked help. I got me a psychiatrist and a therapist, because I come from a background where you don't do that,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't believe in that, and stuff. But me and you, Tamika, talk. When you're toothache, you go to a dentist. When something's wrong with your inside, you go to a doctor. If you want to see if you got breast cancer, you go to your mammograms and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go to a doctor to fix, your mind, what's going on up here? And my mother and I got into it when I was in my 40s because I was going to a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't share with my children because I didn't want you guys to be burdened that your mother was struggling
Yeah.
really, really mentally. And I
Yeah.
tried to keep that hidden from you because I wanted y'all to feel safe. I didn't want, if I put that burden on you guys, I didn't want you to feel like, is mom going to come back from work? Because there's times when I just felt like I just want to drive the car off a cliff sometimes. But my kids, I thought about my kids. That's what kept me going.
Yeah.
Your mother was in a dark place for many years,
Yeah.
but I thank God that I had the strength enough to come through it and to seek out help with nobody really knowing because I didn't want somebody in my ear, you shouldn't be going, you shouldn't be going, you shouldn't be going. I did
Yeah.
it. I don't know if I told you this, Tamika, I was even checked myself into, I took a family leave act in the year January of 2000. And I checked myself into a hospital for 6 weeks on family leave act. But I was an outpatient. I had to check in at 8 o'clock in the morning and I checked out at 5 o'clock for
I
six
never knew that.
weeks. Yeah, that's how bad it was. And I was at work when I had the breakdown and they made me leave. January 2000, I'll never forget it. Because it just happened to be, I was in the control room and my boss came over and I just broke into tears. And he said, Robyn, you the best worker we have here. We can't use you if you ain't well. He said, I want you to leave right now. Don't worry about the shift being covered. I'll find somebody to come in. And I started from that day and I checked myself in that hospital, you know, and for 6 weeks,
I never knew
Yeah.
that, Mom.
25
I
years
was
ago this
in
past
St.
January.
Louis
Yeah.
at the time, so I would have been, yeah, we would have been in
Yeah.
Missouri.
Yeah. I had to help myself.
Well, the strange thing about that is that for you was 2002. And Mom, you know that
2000.
at 2000, in
Yeah.
2002, it happened to me. I had a
You checked in the
birthday.
hospital?
I didn't check
Okay.
into the hospital. I was
Okay.
seeing a therapist, but my marriage at that time was not good. I was struggling because I was already divorced and I was embarrassed about having another failed marriage. I just wasn't happy. And work was really difficult and stressful. My company was very demanding. Outside of the travel, it was just a very demanding job. You had to be on all the time. You had to present all the time. You had to know this number, that number. It was a lot. And I remember I drove to work one day and I drove right past work and I just drove around. I went to the airport and I sat and I watched the planes. I went to a parking deck and just sat there. I was gone all day. And it didn't dawn on me that I was jeopardizing my job, that my husband didn't know where I was, therefore my daughter didn't know where I was. Coworkers were calling, looking for me because I just didn't show up. Somebody got a hold of Grandma Newton's number. I don't know how. And Grandma called my husband at the time. And I can't remember a lot of the details, but I remember walking in the house and just telling them that I just feel off. I didn't feel like myself. Um, Thankfully, May Company understood and they put me on a leave. It was a 9-week leave of absence. Um, I probably was on the couch for a month or two. Um, and what I remember most about that time was feeling like a failure because at that time I wasn't able to be there for Ashley in the way that she needed me to be, but also I was being made to feel bad about that. And I remember him saying one day, loud enough so I can hear, don't you wish your mom would get up and play with you? Like, don't you wish? And it's like, and honestly, too, I was on medication. Medication was different then. That medication had me like
Mm-hmm.
gone. And
Mm-hmm.
but it was like my body and my brain wouldn't allow me to, I just couldn't function. I couldn't function. So after about a month or so, maybe 6 weeks, I took myself off the medication because I just felt like I wasn't there. And I felt like I just needed to be alert. And I know that's not something that you should do, but I felt like I had to do it because I felt like I wasn't there the way I needed to be with Ashley. It just was taking me somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I weaned myself off the medication. And I remember a couple weeks after that, I was taking Ashley to Ohio for spring break. I think I was taking you to spend time with the Bells, if I'm not mistaken. And that morning we were leaving and he was getting ready for work. And I just had this epiphany. And as he was leaving out the door, I said, when I get back from taking Ashley to Ohio, I'm moving out. It was clear. I knew that I had to do it. And mind you, I had secretly rented an apartment. So I had been paying on an
I
apartment for
remember
like,
that. I remember that.
because it was like, yeah, after 9/11, I was like, let me rent this apartment because I don't know. life is short and I don't know what's going to
Yes.
happen. And I need a place to be if something like really goes down. But I made that decision and I like dragged myself out of that dump. And I was like, and then we moved into that apartment, Ashley. I don't know if you remember
I
it,
remember it.
but yeah. So for you, Ashley, I don't know if I wish you knew it, but I guess I wish you knew like how hard I fought to keep myself out of that space so I could be present for
Mhm.
you. Um, and I struggled with that. I struggled with self-worth. I struggled with self-confidence. I really faked it a lot.
Yeah.
I it's
I
the whole
faked
fake it
it
till you
too.
make it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Fake
faked
it till
it.
you make
So,
it.
but I wanted you um to be raised with confidence in yourself, to know that you were beautiful, to be able to stand up for yourself, um, to be able to express yourself, and just have a softer life. So that was a long answer. um, I know that the babies are little, so I don't know if you have an answer for that right now, Mama. If there is
Um,
something you wish they knew or something that you're going through while you're raising them.
um, I think
Or
trying.
hope they know
Mhm.
when they get
I
older.
think I hope they. Something I hope they know is that I'm working through my own mental health also. And then now that I'm in my 30s and knowing that that's kind of when it sparked for the two of you,
Yeah.
I think I'm currently having a tough time trying to figure out what it is I actually want to do. Because
Yeah.
Nana, I identify with you with feeling like you just want to be home and
Yeah.
be there with them. And I don't really feel called to do anything specific. So it's making me feel like a lost individual. Like I don't have a place somewhere other than being a mother. And I think sometimes that's not acceptable. And that's not enough. And I need to find something else. Um, so I think that's kind of bringing me to a place where it's not okay for me to feel like that. And I need to figure out what it is that I want to do. And I'm having a tough time identifying what that is, and finding my own, um, figuring out who I am as a person other than being a mother, if that makes sense. But I
Yes.
hope that they know that
Yes.
I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Mom, what part of yourself did you have to set aside or silence when you became a mother?
What part of myself that I had to set aside?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I guess uh, my time in youth, I guess, because for many years, people thought I left the state because I would never go anywhere. Nobody ever saw me. I was always at home taking care of my kids. And then when I started working, people really didn't see me. So when you guys got older to be like teenagers, into your teens, and I started going out more, people say, Robyn, you here? We thought you left the state because I disappeared.
Yeah.
So it was like I was 17. I really didn't have youth youthful childhood, take care of siblings, having my own child at such a young age, you know, I really didn't have any time to be just a
Young
teenager or
adult, young,
youth.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just experience things. I didn't get a chance to do all that. But yeah, when I started coming out, I was in my early 30s. People
Yeah.
thought I had left. They haven't seen me in years,
Yeah.
years, because I was
Ashley, is there
committed to
any?
working
Yeah.
and committed to work and take care of my kids.
Ashley, is there anything you think you had to set aside when you became a mom?
Um, having to sacrifice things that I would rather or want to do before children. Because Rashad and I would always, bar hop on the weekends because it was just the two of us, and or go out and sit down and have a meal together, or even just something that I feel like I want to buy something nice for ourselves. It's something that um, it felt like it came quickly because we were just so in a groove of just thinking of just the two of us, um, and now we're having to think for two other people. So it wasn't something that we necessarily like we knew that was going to happen, having to
Yeah.
sacrifice a few things, but it just seemed like so abrupt when you're in the moment, I guess.
Yeah.
When you want to
Yeah.
do something and then you're like, oh, I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand that when you said giving up things like when you wanted to buy something for yourself.
Mhm.
I can remember, even though I was in my early stages of working, um, I didn't buy myself anything. I had an old coat that I had from my baby sister. And in wintertime, the lining would fall out of it, and I would restitch that lining up and wear it every winter. And I would buy myself a coat because all my money I wanted to keep, where I was living at, in a good place. My kids was in a safe place, keep the heat on, keep the food in the house, just, I just denied myself the pleasures of buying myself anything. And I always go back to that worn coat that I kept stitching up to keep from buying
Mhm.
something from myself, to make sure I have them, even though it wasn't a whole lot of money coming in, but I knew what every dime had to go to, you know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
buying a coat for myself wasn't even an option,
That's why you have so many clothes
but
now, Mom. You're making up for that.
I
You made up for
I'm
it.
making up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you and Ashley inherit all that.
Yes.
The shoes, the handbags, all that.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the coat because I remember the first winter that Ashley was a baby. We were struggling. We were in Virginia and it was cold that winter. And I remember we didn't have heat. And I remember I was so worried that Ashley wasn't going to learn how to walk because I couldn't put her in the floor because it was so cold. Um,
Coat.
but I remember that winter, I remember I didn't have a coat and I was so scared to call home, but I remember I called you and you and grandma sent me money so I could get a coat because I didn't have a
To
coat that
get a
winter.
coat.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's funny because I didn't know about your coat. So yeah, so you made sure I had mine.
Yeah, and I didn't tell my mother about my coat. And you see how it changed
Yeah.
up where you felt comfortable enough to ask, where I wasn't even
Yeah.
comfortable to ask her, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go to this. Do you think I know the answer to this for mom, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Do you think we were taught to say sorry? Do you think you were taught to
My
say I'm
mother,
sorry?
yeah, my mother's always said that, especially if the siblings was fighting among ourselves.
To
She used to
you.
say you're
Mother to
sorry. Yeah.
mother to child
Oh, you
though.
be,
Mother to
oh,
child. Did grandma ever
I
say
said,
she was sorry to you?
oh, I don't, I don't think she has because I never brought anything to her. I never brought anything to her that I felt like I needed an apology for. So I never said anything for her to say, I'm sorry about that. I never got a chance to do that,
Yeah.
but you and I know I learned a lot that she kept a lot in too.
Yeah. Yeah.
She did a lot of quiet suffering herself.
Yeah. And it wasn't
So,
just of her
so she,
generation to kids. You didn't apologize to kids.
Right. Because I mean, some stories she told me about how her mother, my grandmother, your great grandmother, she was something.
Yeah.
And like you and I, Tamika, had talked about after her passing, she was sinking. And
Yeah.
all she had was her journals. I mean, I found a journal dated 1959. And all she had, she's been journaling and writing all that time because she didn't have anybody to talk to. So that was her therapist.
Yeah.
It was her
So,
therapy. So, but like I said, after reading her journals, I understand as a child she needed help.
mhm.
Because I resented her for putting me in that position. Take care of babies at 7 years old and beyond. She didn't have any help.
Yeah.
I was her only help. So now I understand, and I forgive her for that. I forgave her a long time ago because I
Yeah.
got it. But
Yeah.
after doing some more, finding some more stuff out, yeah, she was thinking really fast and she needed help, and
Yeah.
she had to train me to get the help.
What about you, Ash? Do you think that you were taught to say sorry, or that saying sorry was a normal thing?
Meaning like if I
Mother
needed
to, yeah.
from you. Yeah, but I think that I've only really ever had like maybe one conversation where I felt I needed an apology. Um, it was, when Rashad and I got married, and Grandma Bell, she asked about, possibly having her own table for her and, the grandkids and everything. And, we worked it out amongst ourselves. And, I know you'd gotten upset for, the reason for it, um, but I didn't know that, that conversation that the two of you had made it so that they wouldn't stick around for the wedding. Um, and that affected their presence in the wedding or at the wedding. So that did hurt my feelings. But I know that you didn't have malicious intent. It was just, I know that you were trying to stick up for me, and I understand why you said something. But I think that was just a time where, that was something that I was okay with handling, and,
Yeah.
I just let it be.
Yeah.
Um,
I
even though,
overstepped a boundary.
yeah,
Yeah. And then, yeah. Yeah.
but I felt comfortable enough to talk about it with you, and you said I'm sorry on your own. So that's something that I've appreciated.
So forgiveness is layered. Is there something you had to forgive, not for the other person, but for your own peace?
Me,
Anyone, if you want to jump in?
for my own peace, yeah, there's one person. I had to pick one person.
Anyone, yeah. You don't have to
Oh
say who the
man.
person is. Just, is there something you had to forgive, not for the other person, but for your own peace?
Yeah,
And then to
I
add to
did.
that, I'll say, how do you forgive someone who's never apologized? It's
Because I look at it like this: when you forgive somebody, it's not to benefit really them, it's
yeah,
really to benefit you.
yeah,
Because when I even went to the person, when I felt like they should have said I'm sorry and I got a half ass sorry, and when I went to them and said and apologized to them, I was so at peace, even though they wasn't ready to accept it. You can't make people ready to accept
yeah,
your
yeah,
forgiveness.
yeah,
At least I said it, and I was such the burden had lifted off of my shoulders because I did it. I was
yeah,
obedient to what the word said, to ask for forgiveness And even if they didn't accept it or not,
Yeah.
it was basically, I was, so to speak, the blood was off my hands.
Yeah.
It wasn't on me anymore. And I felt
Yeah.
so relieved when I said I was sorry and asked for forgiveness. But they wasn't ready to accept it. But I felt so much better.
Yeah.
So much better.
What about you,
So
Ash?
forgiveness is really, yeah, I'm this
For
last part.
you.
Forgiveness
Yeah.
is not for you, it's not for them. It's basically for you. Because that's the only
Yes.
way you're going to heal is by
Mm-hmm.
letting that person know, I forgive you, or I'm sorry, or
Yeah.
forgive me.
Yeah.
It's a healing for you to start to move on to something else,
Yeah.
because you can't stay stuck. You're either gonna change and move on, or you're gonna stay stuck.
Yeah. What
And
did they say?
I choose not to stay
Unforgiveness.
stuck. Yeah,
Unforgiveness is like taking poison and expecting the other
poison
person to
and hoping the
die.
other person to die. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's in you. What
I
about you,
I think
Ash?
that I've been learning that not to expect me out of other people
Yes.
a lot, even in friendships that have
Mm-hmm.
failed. There were things that I apologized for that I wasn't really sure needed to come from me, but I did it just because of the fact that I did something that affected them negatively, and it wasn't my intent. So I apologize for what role I played in that situation. And even though I thought I would get one back, I didn't, but
Yeah.
I wanted to at least apologize for my role. So at least I know that I did what I needed to do to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's just something that I would want to do anyway. But you're not going to always expect what you would do out of others.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's a word. And I'm still learning that because I'm a pretty giving person. I give willingly and openly. And I've had some struggles here in Atlanta where when I needed it back, and even because it's hard for me to ask for help. And then so I know when I ask, I
You
really
really
need it.
did.
And so for those people not to be there the way I was, it hurts my feelings. It hurts my feelings. And I always say, well, I know where to put that person and I'm not going to do anything else. And I still do it because it's in me to do. But yeah, so I'm still at your mom's big age of 53. I'm still learning not to expect me from other people. And I do things to do it. I don't do it to get something back, but you would hope that you would have some support because you planted some seeds that, there would be something for you when
You'd
you need
almost
it.
hope
So,
that, they had that same respect, at least for your
yeah,
friendship for you as you would have for them. So it's almost surprising that you didn't get it back because you're kind of learning that, oh, well, maybe you don't feel as deeply for me as I felt for you
feel
to
for
be able to
you.
give that back to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about what we're building now. What do you think we're doing differently as women and mothers now compared to the women that came before us?
I think we're more open than past
That's what I was gonna
generations
say.
before.
Yeah.
Because I know there's, Nana, you've come from a generation where you weren't supposed to speak up when you needed to, and maybe something felt heavy on your heart and you didn't think those around you would listen to you. I think there's, more opportunity for people to come together and like this one here and, express what you've been holding in for so long. I
Yeah.
do think the generation that I'm in is kind of open to that door a bit more. Um, so I think that's something different that's been from past generations.
Yeah. I agree. I
I
agree
agree.
that we're able to call
Mm-hmm.
a thing now. I think we're
Yeah.
also having conversations about mental health that were forbidden. It was so taboo to talk about mental health. That meant you were
Yes.
crazy back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, and teaching our girls to stand up for themselves and to know that they're powerful and they're not here just to serve as wives and as mothers. They can be, anything. And mom, you taught me that. Um, but yeah, I can't wait to see what the world's going to look like when Zoe is
Right.
old enough and becomes a mother and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. It's like, what's it going to be like then?
Yeah. Like I did with Ashley when well, I had you, I said, oh man, what's the world gonna be like when she grows up? And because I'm already seeing the world for what it is. And I was growing up at a time when there was racial issues, civil rights fights, because I was a militant. We had
Hmm.
Black history. Your nana fought at the high school. I was at high school for Black rights. So I was all in that. I was involved in all that. So, fighting for things that our children today is enjoying, and now they're trying to take away.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
so each generation, Zoe's generation, I worry about because of what's happening now, taking away all this, you know, taking away the Black history, shutting down the museums and stuff like that. I fear for what's going to happen because I lay up here and I think about, man, what kind of world is the twins going to have when
Hmm.
they get to college? It scares me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the fear never stops because I feared for Tamika and Neiman. And then when you had Ashley, I feared for Ashley what kind of world she's going to have when she gets older. And now I'm worried about the twins.
Yeah.
What?
It doesn't
Because
stop.
when I look at the news, I be like, oh my God, what kind of world is my twins going to be in?
Hmm. Yeah. So we're going to start to wrap it up. I have three more questions. The first one is, if you could tell your younger self anything right now, what would you say? Mom?
Um, I be brave, meaning ask questions from my mother.
Hmm.
I mean, she's gone now, and there's questions I haven't asked that I should have asked.
Yeah.
You know, but I would have told my younger self, you should have asked more questions. I should have been a little bit more just open about what I was feeling, instead of keeping it inside. Because I was diagnosed with ulcers at 11 years old. So just keeping stuff inside is not healthy. Can you imagine an 11-year-old with ulcers? Because like I said, I had a lot on me and stuff. But yeah, I think my younger self would just I want to feel free to be able to ask my parents, my mother, questions.
Yeah.
I just wanted some answers to some things.
Ashley, what would you tell your little self?
Um, like you have the space to share your feelings. You don't have to be scared to share those feelings.
I think mine would be similar. I wish I would have used my voice more. I wish that I knew that little girl, how smart she was, how loving she was, and how worthy she was, because I didn't always feel that way. Is there anything that you've been longing to say, any of us to any of us, but never had the courage and would like to say now?
Hmm. I miss being a mother. I wish I had my babies back. that time. Now I'm going to cry. Just that time when y'all was little. It was so fast. I miss my babies. Time.
Ashley.
Um, I'm always gonna wish you were closer. There's times where I feel like I just need my mommy, but you know, but I never want you to feel bad about where you wanted to kind of branch out your life and where you would be happier. But yeah, I'm always gonna long for you.
I wish you guys could come to Atlanta. I so wish I could pack you up and come to Atlanta. And I consider moving back all the time. And then I'm like, well, what would I do? What would I do? What happens? Because I want to see the twins grow up. I want them to know who I am. I want them to know who Nani is. And I get envious because they have a grandma that's close.
Hmm.
Um, it's a consideration all the time, all the time. Um, yeah, y'all might have to. Do you guys have a basement?
Yeah, but it's not done.
Yeah, y'all might have to build out the basement if I come.
And we
That would
talked about
have
that too.
that would
Like
have
at
to
like at
be
my mama's house.
that would have to be if I came back. That would have to be what would happen. I need to be
In the
And
in
I'm
a.
basement.
considering
I
go
need a
and I'm considering
mother-in-law
going back.
suite. Yeah,
And I'm considering moving back.
yeah, but yeah, but I think about it all the time. I think about it all the time. Okay.
You just can't
Is there?
move to Asia or wherever you wanted to live a few years ago or consider.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
Carter's was going to send me to Hong Kong. Remember that? And it just
Yeah.
it just worked out that it didn't happen. We lost like a huge. That's when like retail started closing down. Like Toys R Us closed down and something
Hmm.
else, and they started scattering and worried about money, and they just like shut it down. It's like okay, but yeah, I was gonna go to Hong Kong for like 3 years.
I didn't even like that.
Nobody did. Grandma
I
hated
didn't
it.
like that.
Ashley hated it. Yeah. So
The universe worked in our
so
favor.
the universe worked in our favor.
Yeah.
What do we want for the next generation of girls, for our Zoe to know or believe about herself?
Well, I'm always come with the word strong and to believe in herself
Yeah.
and to have her own and this is a little law enforcement in me. Trust no one. Everybody's suspect when it comes to these men. Okay.
There goes Nana.
I
Right.
side eye everybody. So everybody's suspect. That's what I want her to know. If I
That's who
was
I grew up
still,
with.
That's the
yeah, everybody's suspect. They have to prove themselves because especially nowadays, the way these men are talking about hating on our black women,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And I don't. And that's another thing I worry about, Zoe. When I read about the manosphere, whatever they're calling the stuff,
Hmm.
and these females and how they talk, and
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't want my Zoe dealing with nothing like that. So I want her to side eye every man she come in
Don't
contact
worry.
with.
Rashad will do that for
Rashad,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
Rashad will not
yeah,
let that happen.
yeah. But my
Empower you
daddy was
both.
like that too. Ashley, my daddy was like that too. But see what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, Nana had some duds for sure. What about you,
My
Ashley?
dad.
What do you hope for Ashley or for Zoe?
Zoe. Um, to always trust herself and she can start over as many times as she needs to.
Yeah. I want the same. I want her to know that she can do anything and that to trust her instincts and her gut, to use her voice, um, and to know that she's worthy of any and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is how we're going to end it. I'm going to do a little ritual, and each of us is going to share one thing we're ready to release and one thing we're ready to plant, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, for the next generation. What are you willing to release, and what do you want to plant for them? For Zoe. I'll start. I want to release self-doubt and feelings of unworthiness. I want to release second guessing myself. I want to release myself from my mistakes and not keep punishing myself for the mistakes that I've made. I want to love myself and understand that I'm a person. We're all people that have had our first experience here as humans. Nobody knows what we're doing, but I want to release all of that self-punishment and pain. And what I want to plant for her is belief in herself, confidence, and love. I just want her to know that she's so very loved and she can come to any of us for anything.
This is what we want to plant, and Zoe, we're saying.
Yeah, for the next generation. What do you want to release and what do you want
Okay.
to plant?
I want to release holding on to things other people may have done that I may not fully understand. And I want to plant or instill more patience and maybe not fully understanding where life is going to take me, but having faith that it's going to work out.
I want to release worriness, and self-doubt and being scared. And I want to plant love, and openness. Be able to come to me and be open about anything and everything. And I receive it with love.
Yeah. And
I think
safety.
love is very, very important. Yeah, that's safety. I want to be that safety net. Yeah. I'm no judgment here, because I used to tears ain't never killed anybody. Okay. And if you need to cry or whatever, or something happened, whatever the tears may be for, you're safe here. I'm open to listen. You're safe. I'm not going to judge you. You're safe.
I love you. I love you, Ashley. I love you, Mommy.
I love you too.
Mommy love you too. I love my
Thank you so
girls.
much for doing this. I know it wasn't easy. I know we all had anxiety, but it was actually a really good conversation. And I feel tears, I think, are good. They're good for the soul. It's a release.
I didn't have anxiety. I just want you to know.
I feel lighter.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah,
I think I had.
I feel lighter too, but I didn't have. I have anxiety, I guess, because I had to do this kind of stuff, even though I don't work anymore.
Oh, you're talking about the talking.
The talking part, because I had to. This was what I did for 30 years. Probation officer, police officers, social workers, kids, parents.
But it's different though when it's your kids. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
because
it's
of with
like,
your kids,
and it's
but
personal.
yeah, but but I don't know. As anxiety, I don't know. Maybe I had too many anxiety pills.
Mommy.
You know, I got a prescription.
I know you do. I know you do. Uh, So I just want to thank you so much for being here. It was so brave, and I'm so glad we did this. And I really think it's
I'm
going
glad we
to
did it too.
bless some other families. I think I want to do a series. I want to talk to other mothers and daughters and just start the conversation. It's a new day. I feel like there's this
Hmm.
awakening happening, especially with Black women. And
It's
it's just time to put things out in the open and to stop holding it all in. And it's just time to start
right.
Mhm.
healing. And you heal when you start to express, and keeping that stuff in, it affects your health, it affects
It
your
does.
flexibility. That's why I did the stretch therapy, because people store emotions and trauma in their muscles and their joints, and I want to help people release that. So I'm just so
Hmm.
excited that you guys said yes, and I love you so
Yes.
much.
You are so loved,
I
Of
know
my
course.
that.
babies.
I love you
Seed
too,
of my
mommy and Nana.
seed.
All right, well, good night to both of you, and we're going to talk soon. Oh boy, that was a beautiful conversation, and I'm so glad I had it with my mom and my baby. If this stirred something in you, I encourage you to have those conversations with the women in your life, with the generations in your life. It's time to put things out on the table and to just start healing. Say the quiet truths and make space for grace. Healing is a journey, and sometimes it's generational work, as you've seen here. So until next time, be well, be gentle with yourself. This is your first time being human, so you don't have it all together, and you probably never will. Take care.